You canceled plans last weekend, and instead of feeling guilty, you felt relieved. You solved a difficult problem completely on your own, and that felt more satisfying than asking anyone for help. You sat in silence for an hour. No phone, no music, no people. And honestly, that was the best part of your entire day. People have called you antisocial, reserved, hard to read, maybe even cold. But what if none of that is actually a flaw? What if it's a sign of something rare? Something psychology has a very specific name for? Today we're talking about the highly independent introvert. And there's a big difference between a regular introvert and this type. One that most people completely miss. Stay until sign number 6 because that one is going to make a lot of things about yourself suddenly make sense. Welcome back to the Thinking Brain. If you're new here, this is the place where we break down human psychology in a way that actually makes sense for your real life. No textbook jargon. Just honest, clear conversations about why you think, feel, and behave the way you do. Now almost everyone knows what an introvert is. But a highly independent introvert is a different level entirely. These aren't just quiet people. These are people who are wired differently at a neurological level, and psychology actually backs this up. So let's get into the 7 signs. Sign number 1. You recharge alone, but you don't need saving. Yes, most introverts recharge by spending time alone. That's the basic definition everyone knows. But here's what separates the highly independent introvert from the rest. They don't just recharge alone, they regulate alone, process alone, heal alone. They don't need someone to talk them through a hard day. They don't need external validation to feel okay. They go inward and they come back out sorted. Psychologists call this emotional self-sufficiency, and it's genuinely rare. Most people, introverts and extroverts alike, rely heavily on others to stabilize their emotional state. Highly independent introverts have built that system entirely within themselves. This isn't coldness. This isn't shutting people out. It's one of the highest forms of emotional maturity that exists. Sign number 2. You think before you speak, every single time. Have you ever been in a conversation and someone asks you something and you pause before answering? Not because you don't know the answer, but because you want to make sure your answer is actually right before it leaves your mouth. That's not social awkwardness. That's deep internal processing. There's actually fascinating neuroscience behind this. Research shows that introverts use a longer neural pathway when processing information, one that runs through areas of the brain connected to planning, reflection, and problem solving. Extroverts tend to use a shorter, faster pathway tied to immediate sensory reward. This is also why highly independent introverts hate small talk. It's not shyness, it's not rudeness. Small talk feels mentally wasteful to them, like running a high-powered computer just to open a calculator. They want depth. They want meaning. Anything less feels like a waste of their mental energy. Sign number 3. You have a very small, very loyal circle. Look at your contact list for a second. Now think. How many of those people would you actually call if something went seriously wrong? For a highly independent introvert, that number is small and completely intentional. They don't collect friends. They select them. Quality over quantity every single time. They would rather have 2 people in their life who genuinely know them than 20 who only know their surface. And once you're in that circle, the loyalty is extraordinary. They will show up for you in ways most people can't even imagine. But if you break their trust, you usually don't get a second chance. Not out of pettiness, but because they are deeply selective about who they let into their world. Once that trust is gone, the decision is made. Their circle is small, but it is absolutely solid. We're halfway through, and signs 4, 5, 6, and 7 go much deeper than what we've covered so far. Especially sign number 6. This is the one that explains a lot about how highly independent introverts actually experience the world. Sign number 4. You're highly observant, but you say nothing. Highly independent introverts notice everything. The slight shift in someone's tone. The body language that doesn't match the words. The tension in a room that nobody else has picked up on yet. They catch all of it, but they almost never say what they've observed out loud. Instead, they file it away, process it internally, and use it to understand people more deeply. Neuroscience actually explains this. Introverts have a heightened sensitivity to dopamine, meaning their brains are more reactive to external stimuli. They pick up more from their environment than most people, which is also why too much stimulation becomes exhausting for them. People often underestimate them in a room because they're quiet. But the quietest person in the room is often the one who understands it the most. Sign number 5. You hate being told what to do. Highly independent introverts have a deep need for autonomy. They don't follow rules just because the rules exist. They need to understand the reason behind them. If the reason doesn't make sense to them, they won't comply just to keep the peace. This isn't stubbornness. It's independence. They've spent so much time thinking for themselves and building their own internal framework that blindly following someone else's framework feels wrong. That's why many highly independent introverts struggle in rigid corporate environments, but thrive when given freedom. Give them a box and they'll suffocate. Give them space and they'll build something extraordinary. Sign number 6. You process emotions alone, and it actually works. When most people go through something difficult, a breakup, a loss, a conflict, their first instinct is to reach out and talk it through with someone. Highly independent introverts do the opposite. They go inward, they get quiet, they step away for a while, and come back having already worked through it. Psychology calls this autonomous emotional regulation. And research shows that when done well, internal processing can be just as effective, sometimes even more effective, than talking things out. They journal, they take long walks, they sit with discomfort until it transforms into clarity. But there is a shadow side to this. Sometimes highly independent introverts hold things in too long. The line between healthy solitude and harmful isolation can become blurry. Sign number 7. People drain you, but loneliness doesn't scare you. Most people are afraid of being alone. The silence feels uncomfortable. Highly independent introverts are different. They don't just tolerate solitude. They choose it. They can go days without meaningful social contact and feel completely fine. Grounded, focused, even energized. Psychology makes an important distinction here: the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is painful. It's the feeling of being disconnected when you don't want to be. Solitude is chosen. It's peaceful, powerful, and restorative. Highly independent introverts have mastered solitude. So what does all of this really mean? If you recognize yourself in several of these signs, understand this. Being a highly independent introvert is not a disorder. It's not a deficiency. It's not something that needs to be fixed. These individuals are often deeply self-aware, emotionally mature, and incredibly capable. They think before they act. They value depth over noise, and they build a strong inner world that sustains them. But independence and isolation are not the same thing. Independence is strength. Isolation can become a trap. The real goal is balance, being whole on your own, while still allowing the right people into your world. If this video resonated with you, and you found yourself nodding along to several of these signs, remember this. The things that made you feel different or hard to understand growing up might actually be the very things that make you exceptional. Drop a comment below and tell me, how many of these signs were you? And if you know someone who is exactly like this, share this video with them. Sometimes people just need to hear that the way they are wired makes perfect sense. Subscribe for more psychology insights, and I'll see you in the next one.